Welcome, everybody, to the NARPM Radio Podcast. I am your host, Pete Neubig, the voice of NARPM. And today I have Jo-Anne Oliveri, also known, I just never knew this, but also known as the Purple Empoweress. She's a distinguished figure in the field of property management with over 3 decades of real estate experience and 15 years devoted to coaching, mentoring, and consulting in property management. She's become a global thought leader and influencer in the industry. Jo is the founder and managing director of iRevolution, Caboodle, Flussos. Did I say that right? Flussos or Flussos?
Correct.
Flussos?
Yes.
And the Property Management Academy. And Jo is all the way from Brisbane, Australia, joining us today. So Jo-Anne, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. It's so great to be here. And yes, I'm in the future at the moment.
That's right. It's you're what, 13 hours ahead of me or something like
Yes.
that. And so, yeah. All right. So 15 years experience. So I'm going to ask you, what are the biggest shifts you've seen in property management over the past 15 years?
Yeah, well, probably the obvious answer to that is the technology that's been, rapid fire. Probably in the last 5 years, it's more rapid fire, but, I've been in the industry for over 30 years now. And
She started when she was 2.
And in that 15 years prior, the technology was the property management platforms we were using. That we saw, small improvements, and it was really just a place to store data, and it still is a place to store data. But as property managers evolved over the last 15 years, and they wanted more for their role. They struggled with maintenance. They struggled with inspections. They struggled with different areas, key management. And so we saw a lot of companies step up and say, how can we fix this? And they developed technology. And a lot of it was very rudimentary back then. It really wasn't supporting the property manager in ways that improved efficiency or improved productivity. But now what we're seeing, that those rudimentary programs have now evolved into something amazing, which has completely changed the role of a property manager. And, some of the key areas there that we've seen that have changed are things like maintenance. There's a lot of AI involved in maintenance. Back in the day, we were employing someone solely to do maintenance. And the reality was there wasn't a lot of maintenance that needed to be done in property management, but there was chaos around it. So technology has removed that chaos and given back time. And then the other thing is the technology we have around inspections with the 360 cameras and the way that it can compare the quality of a property and the standard of a property and the difference in a property. It takes away the human emotion involved in inspecting properties, because quite often it's someone's personal preference as to the way that they report a property. So we've got this great standard of reporting available to us now. And probably the biggest one that we see now is workflows. And what I love about property management is everything we do is a task. We start a lease renewal, there's a series of actions and steps involved in that, and they're tasks. And property management isn't property management without doing tasks. So workflows are completely changing the industry and the way that we do day to day. And it's really helping us to, utilize those remote workers to a much better standard of efficiency and consistency in the business. So, it's rapid fire now, the technology, and I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I remember when I first went to my first NARPM national conference, and there was just few vendors there. Now there's like 100 vendors,
Yes.
with all, and a lot of them technology based. Now I got to ask you, years ago, I always heard that property management in Australia was years ahead of property management in the US. Are you seeing now with all the technology that that gap is closed, or do you still see Australia being years ahead of US?
Well, that's really interesting. And that's a really good question, Pete, because I've worked in the US and I've worked in Australia, and there's very few people that have done that. I was vice president of a property management company in Southern California. So I know hands on the difference between Australia and the US. And I honestly think that was Australian egos talking. And everywhere I go in the US, they say, "Is Australia better?" And the answer is outright no. I love the technology better in the US. I think Australia is probably at least 3 years behind, maybe 5 years behind in
Wow.
technology. Yes.
That's the first I heard of that. Now, I do know, like back in the day, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, because of the legislation requirements, it just required Australians to be better at their craft than US. But I feel like the legislation and regulations, especially in the coastlines here, has really made these PMs have to, you know, get get better. And then now you're saying the technology is even better here in the States. So that's pretty amazing to hear.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And, technology has been evolving rapidly in the US, and Australia is just failing to take
Flatline.
that up.
It's
They're,
flatline.
they're, yeah, they're relying on the property management platforms here to do it. And they're kind of like testing waters in technology, but not immersing themselves into technology. It's still like a push against it and a reluctance by property managers to completely adapt. So, they are lagging behind badly here. Sorry, Aussies, but yeah, you got to step up.
Where do you think PM business owners are falling behind right now? Is it just that amount of technology? It's kind of like water, or is there something else they're falling behind in?
Yeah, I think, like we've always known that traditionally the property management office was quite often owned by someone who'd been in sales. And so their experience was in the sales side of thing and didn't really know a lot about property management. We've seen that changing, that we've got a lot of property management only businesses now. But there still seems to be this reluctance, or what I say, lack of courage and confidence to actually make decisions about the business, about the way that they will run their business, about the technology that they use. And I think this is they have a greater fear of losing staff than they have of losing clients. And until that switch happens, then they will have the confidence and the courage to look at technology and be able to, stack their technology, because technology is confusing. And then once it comes into a business, the confusion is who does what when, like what don't we do now or what do we do differently? And and what they're trying to do is use human minds on what technology can do better than human minds. So it's this constant pushback against technology, but they don't even realize they're doing it. So I would say the biggest thing that leaders need to do now is just have the courage to jump in there with technology and change the role of the property manager, because the role that we saw yesterday is not the same as the role we see for the property manager today. That has been a massive shift there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. It made me think. Also, you can be reluctant to technology because you might lose clients, right? Because you say the
Yes.
client needs to have my phone number, and really you can have an AI bot that'll take away 80% of it, and it wouldn't reduce the number of clients that you have, wouldn't create churn. So I like that. Okay, you've worked with many firms, both in the U.S. and Australia. What separates high performing property management companies from average ones?
Yeah, this is another. I love your questions, Pete, because these are the things that help companies and leaders and even property managers to think, can we do this better? And I think One of the biggest things is accountability. They see accountability as a measure of efficiency, consistency, customer service, delivering on customer service promise, and they will manage every element of business. And that's important. A lot of people call that micromanagement, but what you can't measure, you can't manage. That's a definite. And you have to measure that. And what you can't manage, you can't measure. So, there's no point in business in going along and thinking, we're doing really well here because we feel we're doing well. And that's the difference between a good company and a great company or a
So
phenomenal company.
I'll paraphrase here.
Yes,
High performing agencies review metrics and hold people accountable to those metrics.
exactly.
That would be a good way of saying that.
Perfect way of saying it.
And then the average ones either have metrics but don't look at them, don't have metrics, or they have metrics, don't hit them, and then people aren't accountable to them, and they're not trying to fix the issue that's causing the metric to be below what they think it should be.
Exactly. They just let it slide by because they don't want to offend the person, or they think that person's just had a bad run, or, they make excuses and are ignorant to what's going on. Whereas, the high performing ones, if they're measuring what's going on, they're identifying what needs to be done to resolve it. But the other part of this, Pete, is if you're measuring what's going on, then when they have the great streaks of good rates of return, high efficiency, higher productivity, they can reflect back and say, how did we do that? Because we want to make sure that we keep doing that. If you don't know how you achieved your targets and success, then you don't know what you need to do to repeat it, to do it again. Just as if you've got a failure somewhere, if you don't know where that failure is, then you'll just keep repeating that failure. So, measuring and monitoring generates success all the way along because you know what's good, you know what's bad. You repeat what's good, you change what's bad. So, yeah, very important.
It's funny. When I'm running VPM right now, and last year we as a leadership team were looking at some major numbers, three main KPIs, and they were never consistently green, and we weren't doing anything with them. And I finally realized, I'm like, we're creating a culture of if you don't hit your metrics, it's okay. And
Yeah,
that's not the culture we wanted to create. So we had to really either change the KPI or change the number or do something about it and achieve those KPIs. And I'm happy to say this first quarter we actually hit those main three KPIs. So it goes back to what exactly you said. If I know it's failing and I hold myself accountable, I will create the processes or I'll create a way to solve that, which will then make that number green.
exactly. And a lot of companies, Pete, what they do is they have key performance indicators, but key performance indicators have to come from somewhere. And they come from what I call the BPI, the business performance indicator, because we know with key performance indicators, we have to achieve this in order to make sure that we achieve the business performance indicators, the business targets. So you can't make up key performance indicators if they don't lead to an overall end result for the business. And that's where I think of a lot of them fail because they're looking at other companies and they're saying, well, they get their property managers to achieve this, this, and this. But what does that mean for their business? So you can't copycat off other businesses. You
Mhm.
learn, but you create your own. Yeah.
So is this the secret? I had a question I was going to ask you later on, but I'm gonna move it up here and ask now. Is this the secret to building accountability in a team without micromanaging? Is it KPIs? Is that really the secret, or are there a couple other secrets out there that you've seen in your
Yeah. Well, the KPIs is a major part of it. Without key performance indicators, we're floundering. We're doing all sorts of things. But the secret also, I believe this is a big one, is immersion into whatever technology, whatever process that you say, this is the way that we do this. So it's immersion into your technology, your team roles, your, like your promise of delivering to clients. There's no point in making a promise to clients as we're going to do this for you, and we don't know how we deliver that. That's a lack of accountability. So, one of the biggest things I also say is there is no such thing as micromanagement. It's a buzzword that's come about in the industry as an excuse for property managers to push back and say, stop it, you're micromanaging me. We have to manage every element of the business, of what our, team members do. Or else, like we can have one little area of mistake that becomes one of the biggest liabilities for the business.
Yeah,
You might think,
I call them taps, 2x4s, and Mack trucks.
exactly. I love that.
Tap you on the shoulders, telling you, "Hey, I got a problem here." If you don't do anything about it, then they hit you with the 2x4, and if you still do anything about it, then the Mack truck runs you over. Right.
Yeah, I
So,
love it. That's a great way of seeing it. Yeah,
so I think I think a lot of property management company owners have a hard time having difficult conversations. And I think a conversation becomes difficult because they don't have KPIs. And so
yeah,
they say things like, "Hey Joe, I feel like you're not doing a good job." Right? And it's like, well, Joe's like, "Well, I feel like I am." So we're an
yeah,
impact, right?
yeah,
And so by having these KPIs, you could say, "Joe, I feel like you're doing a good job, but you're not because here's the numbers." Right?
yeah, yeah,
And then that's a time, and of course it shouldn't get to this, it shouldn't be like a yearly thing. Like you should be able to see the numbers and course correct. So tell me
100%.
about like how often should I be meeting with the team or the supervisors meeting with the team so that we can manage with through accountability versus the micromanagement or versus like looking at stuff or not managing at all, right? The worst than micromanaging is probably abdicating and just
Yeah.
saying go at it and go forth and conquer.
Oh, most definitely. Like, is it fact or fantasy? Because fantasy is feel. And if you see a sports coach on the field, they're not saying, I feel that you're doing a great job out there. They look at the scores and they look at the stats and they say, like, guys, this is what we need to do in order to get that next try or goal or whatever it might be. And it's the same in business. It's like, this is not about fantasy. It's not about feel. And what we need to be able to do is talk to the team about what they're achieving. And I say it's always about, when you're talking to the team and encouraging them to do better, you should always be able to tell the truth. And the best way to do about that is to tell them what they're doing right. Give them 3 cuddles. You did this right, this right, this right. But I'm going to give you a kick now because this is where you can do better.
Cuddles and kicks, I like it.
Yeah, yes. So cuddle, 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 kick. Um, and then they're listening to you, they're absorbing that, and then they're agreeing. It's like, yeah, I did you great there, and yeah, you're right, Joe. Like I really failed in that area. What do I need to do to improve? And this is where business owners are not having enough conversations with their team. So
Right.
there should be a one-on-one every month. Go over the results, make it meaningful. So you've got your targets, these were your KPIs. This is what you achieved, this is what you failed on. And this is why you failed on that. This is why you achieved those things. You're putting so much focus into that that you're missing out on this area of achievement. Why is that? And quite often it's because the team member is fearful of conversations or fearful of doing the wrong thing. And that's where the business owner puts on their coaching hat and they become a coach, not a best friend. So you've got to be able to, cuddle, cuddle, kick, and then the team will improve and they'll stop seeing that micromanagement as micromanagement. Rather, it's performance enhancing.
It's management.
It's management.
Management.
Yeah, think of the sports coach.
So I'm a big fan of meeting weekly with the team. Now I don't personally, as a CEO of VPM, I don't meet with every one of my team members weekly, but my supervisors will meet with their teams weekly. And you're saying monthly. Do you think weekly's too much, or do you like weekly? but you're saying a minimum is monthly. But what are your
A
thoughts on
minimum,
weekly?
yes. So that's the one where you go over the results. Everyone has targets for the month to achieve the overall 12-month target. I have, what I call the huddle in the morning, and the
Mhm.
huddle is no more than 7 minutes. And
That's
with
a daily
technology,
huddle every day, daily.
daily huddle every day. And what you're doing at the daily huddle is you're looking at what needs to be done today, who's in, who's got a high productivity day, who's got a low productivity day. Because people might be assigned responsibility for certain roles or tasks, but the business has promised an overall, result for the clients. So it's up to the business to say, you've got high productivity today, I'm redistributing the load. And that's what a huddle is all about. Or I
Okay.
need you to, not focus on that today. We can do that later in the week. Every day you get focus on what we need to do. And you see this in every other industry. It's like, this is what we're doing today. Let's go and do it as a team,
When,
not an individual go off. And then the weekly is very
all right,
important.
pause on the weekly. I got a couple of
Yep.
questions on the huddle. Um,
Yes.
how big does the company get before the huddle needs to be broken up? Like, can you have a full company huddle? Like, if I'm only four people, I don't need four, I don't need three different huddles. I can have one huddle. Do you see at some point, whether it's 15, 20, 30, 50 people, that the huddle needs to be broken up into different groups?
If those 14, 15 people are all focused on delivering on the one thing, that is managing the property for the clients, then yes, you can have everyone at that huddle, because your technology, your dashboards, is giving you the information on what needs to be done today.
Okay.
So you've got to rely on that information. So, if I look at the workflows determine that, like today we need this action or step done. And so we work on just that action and step. And if we look at something like a tenancy renewal, that can be done over a period of 3 months. But just because we've got, this open tenancy renewal, we're not working on it today. We're not working on it tomorrow. We can see that we've got this, big, long list of tenancy renewals. But today we only need to do one thing on all of the ones that are open. And that's where property managers get so bogged down in, like, "Oh, I'm working on 30 renewals at the moment." It's like, yeah, but they're all at the exact step that they need to be today.
Got it.
So, we don't get overwhelmed with everything. We get, highly focused on the action and step that needs to be done today. And that's what huddles are all about. So if you've got a bigger team and it's the property management operations team, then yes, that huddle is done together. But if it's, like the supervisor's team, then their huddle is separate, because that's about, we need to achieve this because we're falling behind in targets for the month. So this is what we need to go out there and focus on.
So, for example, if I'm pod based, each pod might have their own huddle. I'm not going to have a huddle with all the pods. Would that be a good way to say that's how we break down the huddles?
Yeah, well, even Podbase. So I don't know if you know this, but I was the original creator of what a pod is. It's a profit optimization distribution zone, pods. So I created that acronym, and the
Nice.
way a pod is, it's a grooming ground for your next member of the team.
Right.
So pods, they kind of like, they grow and they reach that status like a balloon where it's going to split. But we've got the member of the team who's ready to start a next portfolio, and then pods. But overall, we've still got maybe 3 or 4 pods that between those pods we might distribute loads.
Got it. So if you cross pollinate the pods, then one huddle. If the pods are kind of individualized, then you can have three different huddles with the three different pods.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now tell me about your weekly meetings.
Right. So the weekly meetings are all about, like getting on top of things for the week. So before the week finishes, I like to do audits by the end of the week. And those audits, what we're doing is we're saying these things need to be done in order to complete out the week. So if we've done inspections for the week, those reports need to be out within 24 hours of an inspection being done. If we've done, the move in, it needs to be completed. So what we're doing as the team leader or business owner, whoever might be, leading that team, is we're going through and we're looking at arrears results, maintenance, all of those things to say this needs to be done before we close out the week. So,
So do you like your weekly meetings midweek then? Because I know Mondays are always they feel like you open a door and Mike Tyson's there and he's punching you in the face. So
yeah.
what do you think is the ideal day for a weekly meeting?
Yeah, ideal day is either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning because
Okay.
it gives us that time to close out. And what the team leader also does from that is prep for the next week. They're looking at what's happening next week, who's in, because we might have team away. And if team's away, we're ready to redistribute their load as well. So just because the person's away, we don't call the client and say, I'm sorry, we can't do that today because someone's away. We're constantly redistributing and balancing load.
Now give me a sample agenda of your weekly meetings. What's the agenda that you like?
Yeah, the agenda I like is always start off with what we've achieved for the week. Great job here, great job there. And the reason why we achieved that great job was this cuddle,
Uh,
cuddle, cuddle. And now we're
okay.
going to do a few kicks because we've got the team engaged then. They're like, yeah, that's great. Yeah. And if there was an individual performer, then, shout them out, and say, this person achieved this in the team because we notice they're focused. I've done a lot of Disney training, and Disney is all about, they call them, wow moments, which is witnessing outstanding work. And Disney calls out great performance. And we should do that, in our industry as well. Call it out. But then, if there is someone who's poor performer, don't call that out at your team meeting. So, you
Uh,
know,
praise in,
individually.
praise in public, redirect in private.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So I do the feel goods. I do the cuddle cuddle. What's next? And how long do you think the weekly meeting should be? About 45 minutes, an hour? Is that kind of the time frame?
Never longer than 45 minutes. I like to keep it to 30 minutes. I like to keep it going, or else it becomes a chat fest and you lose focus. So you need the agenda. The other thing I always say to the team is if you've got something that needs to be brought up at that meeting, like I don't want to hear discussions in the office all week. That costs money when they're just discussing things. If they need to discuss something, it comes to the team
Yeah.
meeting. So
Agreed.
yeah, it's just if you add up the time that 15 minutes from yours and yours and yours, we've suddenly lost 2 hours. So
100%.
yeah,
So
so
we use like Slack, and
yeah,
one of our one of our internal um, policies is that you cannot Slack anybody a challenge unless it's a 5 alarm fire. All challenges go to the weekly meeting. And what we have
fantastic.
found is 80% of those challenges are usually solved by the time we have the weekly meeting.
Exactly. And that's why I say, like it goes on the agenda. If it's not on the agenda, we don't discuss it. And quite
Mhm.
often you'll have your agenda there and you'll say, so and so put this on. We'll talk about that. No, it's been resolved. And if
Right.
someone tries to bring something else up, I said, no, it's not on the agenda. It needs to go on the agenda next week,
I
or you
love
talk
that.
to me
I don't do
privately.
that. I'm going to start doing that.
Good, good.
Mhm.
Because they just go off in different directions with their talking, and suddenly,
Yeah.
an hour's gone. So,
I got to tell you, Joe, I'm amazed at how many people I talk to that have meetings with no agenda.
oh,
And you're right. It just becomes a chat fest.
yeah,
Yeah. And
gosh,
then you get nothing done. Nothing gets accomplished.
exactly. Agenda is key to this. And you've got your regular points and then the points that come up during the week.
All right. So I do my cuddle. We have stuff that's on the agenda that's during the week that's not a 5 alarm fire. Do you go over to KPIs in this weekly meeting as well, or do you wait till the end of the month on your monthly meeting?
No, wait to the end of the month.
Wait
What
till
we're
the end.
doing is we're looking at how we're tracking for the KPIs and we're hitting on, we need to get this done.
Got it.
We're seeing, slippage in arrears or things like that.
Where do you ask them to rate the meeting at all? That's an EOS thing. traction thing. Like I never do the rate the meeting. I do what's your stress level. That's what I used to do in my property management. Because if it's a 10 plus, like, okay, we got to figure something out. If it's a 2 or 3, we're good.
Yeah.
Do you do that in your meetings, or do you recommend that to your clients at all?
I recommend there is a rating on management, because then you get back, like how are the team feeling and help with morale. But I have a rating, like a self rating I give the team, where they let me know out of 5 where they're feeling in their own performance, in their own, knowledge, in their own kind of like confidence. Um, and that's a self rating that then helps me to go back to them at the one on one. So they have to prepare this prior to the one on one. And then I can look at that and say, well, you've only given yourself a 3 here. Why is that? And it then helps me to understand how they're feeling, even how they feel within the team structure, if they're floundering in the team. And because sometimes, they can feel a little bit bullied, and we're not aware of that. We see someone who's confident, but they're actually kind of like sitting in their own shell, and they're getting more and more caught up in their own shell because they're feeling bullied or overwhelmed. And if we don't identify that, we can lose them, or their performance starts slipping. So it's really important for them to be able to explain how they're feeling, and not be judged by that.
One of the things that we just launched at VPM is a survey to the supervisor. So not the VA side yet, but not the virtual assistant side yet, but the survey to the supervisor. So after 2 weeks, the supervisor, like when they hire somebody after 2 weeks, they'll get like a 2 or 3 question survey based on the orientation. Then they get a 30-day, a 60-day, and a 90-day, and then it's like every 6 months or once a year, and
Yes.
it keeps a health score. So you can
Oh,
see if the team member is in alignment, if they're going up or down in their health score.
yeah, that's brilliant. I love that, because it's always important to check in and just see how they're going. One of the things you've got to be very careful on is, if you are rating a team leader or supervisor, that the team aren't ganging up, and they're giving poor ratings on that supervisor because there's something going on. And we see this with coaches in sporting teams, where team performance falls, and they're blaming the coach, and it's the whole team that's pushing against this coach, and management hasn't stepped in to stop the bad behavior and the culture that's creeping into this sporting team, and the sporting team falls apart.
Mhm.
um, and then they've got to kind of like rebuild and everything. We see this over and over. And this can happen in business too. So we've got to really, when we get this information as business leaders, we've got to drill down to, where is this coming from? What's creating this? And is it a bad culture that's seeping through? Is it a gang that's, just going up against someone who's just doing their job? We're telling them to do their job, but the team is pushing back on it, so they look like the bad guy. So yeah, we've really got to analyze it and understand what's really going on here.
So Joe, what is one thing somebody who's listening to this podcast, typical property manager, business owner, can implement this week to improve performance?
Oh, Pete, I would say, the thing that, and I'm not just saying this because I'm involved in workflows, but workflows. What we're seeing with workflows is, regardless of what workflow, technology you use, that the team push back on it. They say, no, we do this faster than the workflow. And the reality is they don't.
No,
They've got these whiteboards everywhere, and, they don't know the exact step that they're at, with any of
no.
the
And they
workflows.
don't do it the same way all the time.
Exactly. There's a lack of consistency. If a team member leaves, then we're like, whoa, like, what were they in the middle of doing? What stage were they at? And, if the team member is even away and they're not well for the day, we need to be able to step in and do what needs to be done for that day, not say, well, sorry, that person's not here. You can't run a business like that. So, workflows, I think, is one of the biggest game changers. But, like, with the workflows will come your AI too, and the understanding of AI. But please get used to workflows. Stop using a human mind when it comes to workflows because they're very intelligent, very intuitive. And what doesn't feel right is only because workflows make something more kind of like congruent in the way it flows from one step to the next and one
But
team member
it
to the
also
next.
makes it rigid too. Like you can't color outside the lines. Like this is what you do, right? Versus like, oh well,
Exactly.
one property manager likes to do it this way, the other property manager likes to do it this way. It's like, no, this is the way we manage properties.
100%. And they should never, ever have within their team where one property manager says, I never do it that way. This is the way I do it. That's not
You were
that.
in my office back in 2015, evidently, because that's exactly what happened.
Exactly.
All right, Joe. If somebody's interested to reach out to you, want to learn more about you and your businesses and your coaching, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I would say probably the best way is to visit my website, jooliveri.com. And you'll get my email there because my email is a little bit difficult. It's irrevolution.com. But the best way to remember that is irrevolution is my surname backwards. So
Uh,
I always said I'd
we have
create
to know your surname and then make it backwards. That sounds
a
way complicated. So let's give the website one more time. It's Joe,
jooliveri.com.
and it's JOOL. So we got double O's, JOOLIVERI.com.
Exactly.
It's not .au for you Australian, you Aussie, no?
Oh, no, I'm global.
Oh, thank you so much. If you are listening to this and you are not a NARPM member, you can go to narpm.org or give them a call at 800-782-3452. And if you are in the market to learn more about remote team members, or you want to just connect to a marketplace with over 45,000 remote team members looking for work in the property management space, go to vpmsolutions.com or feel free to email me direct, pete@vpmsolutions.com. Thanks for being here, Joe.
My pleasure. Thanks, Pete. Bye.